Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most influential and, let's be honest, controversial texts in modern religious history. It's called Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. First published way back in 1875, this book basically lays out a completely radical way of thinking about reality, God, and what it means to be human. So let's get into the core ideas that make it so revolutionary. At the heart of this really dense metaphysical book is one single provocative question. And it challenges everything we think we know. Is all the pain, the sickness, the stuff we go through, is that just a fact of life we have to accept? Or, and this is the big or, could it all be a profound misunderstanding? A collective belief that we actually have the power to change? That's the problem this book sets out to solve.
And the answer it gives? Well, it's a total 180 from conventional thought. It proposes that the things we see as our biggest struggles, sickness, sin, even death itself, they aren't concrete realities. Nope. It calls them illusions, just errors in our thinking that come from a false view of what's real. And the key, it argues, is that you can overcome these illusions not with pills or procedures, but with a deep spiritual understanding.
Okay, so to get a handle on the solution, we first have to really understand the problem as the book sees it. And it frames our entire material existence as something called the dream of mortal life, basically a fundamental mistake in how we perceive everything. So where does this dream come from? The book points to a concept it calls mortal mind. Now, this isn't a physical brain. Think of it more like a faulty operating system for reality. It's the whole system of belief that starts with matter as its foundation. The idea that our feelings, our thoughts, our very lives are based in physical stuff. According to the text, this is the original lie that leads to all our suffering.
So if mortal mind is the root cause, what are the symptoms? Well, the book calls them errors. Things we usually consider just a normal part of life, getting sick, being afraid, even dying, are presented not as inevitable facts, but as the direct results of believing in a world based on matter. They're the painful but logical outcomes of starting with the wrong premise.
All right, so if mortal mind is the big problem, what's the solution? This is where the book makes a radical pivot. It's all about a completely new and all-encompassing understanding of God. And this isn't just a small adjustment, it's a complete flip of the materialist worldview.
This right here, this is the bedrock of the entire system. Science and Health defines God not as some being who created everything, but as the totality of all real existence. God is the only life, the only substance, the only intelligence. The key takeaway is that there is literally nothing real outside of this all-good spiritual reality. This really forces a big shift in your thinking. The book is essentially asking us to move away from this idea of a humanly circumscribed God, a personality in the sky you can bargain with who might change their mind. Instead, it presents God as divine principle. Think of it like a law of the universe, like gravity, but for good. It's unchanging, absolute, constant love and truth that is always in operation. And this, of course, leads to a huge logical question, right? If God is infinite, all-encompassing, and only good, then where does all the bad stuff fit in? What about evil, sickness, and matter? If good is literally all, then its opposite can't also be real. The book's answer is that it just isn't. It has no real status. It's fundamentally unreal. Now, redefining God on this scale naturally leads to the next big step, redefining what it means to be human. If God is all, then what, the book asks, are we? Let's start with the idea the book wants to completely tear down. The view that, we're physical beings, that we are our bodies, born into a material world, and that these bodies get sick, they age, and eventually they die. This is the story our five senses tell us every single day. And here is the radical counterpunch. The book asserts that our true identity isn't physical at all. The real man, and that means all of us, is a spiritual idea. We are the direct reflection or image of the divine mind, which it calls love. Our true substance isn't flesh and bone, but consciousness that perfectly reflects its divine source. So it all boils down to this critical distinction between two versions of you. On one side, you have mortal man, the fake ID, the false concept that we are a physical body that can suffer and die. And on the other, you have spiritual man, our true identity, the perfect, unchanging, eternal reflection of God who is only governed by divine harmony. The book's claim is simple. The first one is an illusion, and the second one is the only reality there is. Okay, this is all fascinating as a philosophy, but how does it actually do anything? How does knowing you're spiritual and perfect change a single thing in your experience? Well, this is where the book gets down to its practical application: healing. So the healing process it describes is entirely mental and spiritual. It's a discipline of thought. First, you have to identify any sickness not as a physical condition, but as a false belief popping up from that mortal mind we talked about. Step 2, you have to mentally deny its reality, actively argue against what your body and senses are screaming at you. This is followed by the most important part: affirming the spiritual truth that you are actually perfect, governed only by God's law of harmony. And the result of getting that thought right, it's called a demonstration. The illusion of sickness just vanishes, and that change shows up as physical healing. And this is where Jesus comes into the picture. Science and Health presents him not as some kind of supernatural magician, but as the master scientist. His healings are seen as the ultimate proof, the ultimate demonstration, that understanding this divine principle is way more powerful than any so-called material law, and that it can and does overcome all forms of suffering. So as we pull all this together, the entire philosophy really comes down to one central continuous action: learning to completely reverse the evidence that our physical senses present to us every single day. And this brings us to the core conflict, the big choice the book lays out. On one side, you have the testimony of our material senses. Matter is real, the body is in charge, and sickness and death are non-negotiable facts. But on the other side, you have the revelation of what it calls divine science, and it asserts the absolute opposite. Spirit is the only reality, mind is in charge of the body, and all error is unreal because God, who is only good, is literally all. You have to choose which version of reality you're going to live in. And that right there is the book's mission statement. It's meant to be a system, a science, that allows you to systematically reverse that false testimony from your senses. And in doing that, the idea is to completely dismantle the foundation that suffering is built on. In the end, Science and Health throws down one of the most profound challenges imaginable. It claims that the reality we see, touch, and feel is basically a dream, and that our true nature is perfect, spiritual, and eternal. It is a staggering proposition, and it leaves every reader with one powerful, lingering question to wrestle with: what if it's right?